But the big thing that's getting lots and lots of people annoyed about today about what the government is doing is what Ian has texted me about. Council elections. This is how tyranny starts. Next summer we'll try to postpone the general election. So that is Ian's view on that. Let's find out what Laila Cunningham thinks. She's a Reform UK councillor, co-leader of Reform's Law and Order campaign. Laila, democracy denied?
Definitely. Listen, if you're confident in your record, then you face the voters. And I think they're blaming it on some kind of reorganisation. Is that right?
Yes, they're saying there's reorganisation of local government. They say that is necessary.
Reorganisation happens all the time in democracies, and elections still go ahead. And I put it to them: perhaps you should reorganise after elections, not instead of them. The thing is, people vote for a certain term. So if you extend that term, you no longer have the permission of the voters to govern. You're basically giving yourself permission. And I bet you, if we weren't polling so high, these elections would go ahead.
Yeah, it's a very, very good point, Laila, and certainly a number of people very, very annoyed about this and say that these elections simply should take place. And even if these bodies aren't going to be set up for another 2 years, well, elect the councillors for a couple of years. Do that.
Yeah, I mean, this is how democracy erodes, right? Quietly. It's not with a big revolution. It's quietly, bureaucratically dressed up as process.
What would you say, Laila, to people who would say to you that you defected from the Conservatives to Reform UK, so actually there should have been a by-election for you?
Well, because that's not how our electoral system works.
It can. You know? It can work that way.
Listen, if there was a big call for a by-election, I would consider it, but not one person has called for it apart from some Labour commentators on X. My priorities have not changed. In fact, I was elected on a set of priorities, and I felt that the Conservative Party had failed to prioritise and deliver those priorities, so I could no longer face my voters or my residents and say I'm still sticking up for you under the banner of the Conservative Party.
So what would you say then to Keir Starmer? What's your message to him about these local elections and what should happen? Because, of course, Reform UK riding high in the polls. There are many councillors there already, over 600 of them who are elected, some who've defected like you, and others who want to be elected candidates in May who won't get the chance to put their views and put their manifesto to the electorate. What would you like to happen?
Well, I mean, in a democracy, you just don't extend your own term. The voters do that. And anything else is illegitimate, because once you normalise cancelling elections, you normalise ruling without consent, right?
Yeah.
And so elections should happen on time, every time, even if the governing party is going to lose, because it's not about maintaining control. It's about asking consent from the public for you to govern. And the fact that they ask Conservative councils, I mean, it really is a political cartel protecting itself against reform. It's just collusion. The
Conservatives say, we spoke to James Cleverly earlier, the shadow local government secretary, saying that he hopes and has certainly said that Conservative councillors won't take the option anyway to have these elections later. We'll see what happens on that. We will be holding their feet to the fire on that.
Can I just come back on that? That's so disingenuous, because the Conservatives cancelled it in last May.
Yeah, it's a very fair point. I want to talk about Bridget Phillipson blocking the publication of trans guidance that would force businesses and public bodies to protect women-only spaces. This is the Education Secretary. She also is the Women and Equality Secretary. She's given a statement to the High Court describing the proposed rules as trans-exclusive, failing to sign them off for more than 3 months after receiving them. I mean, the Supreme Court was incredibly clear on this. Men are men and women are women, and the guidance should be very, very straightforward, shouldn't it, Laila?
I mean, it really shouldn't take a Supreme Court ruling to say exactly what you said, that a woman is a woman. Women fought very hard for women-only spaces, and they should only be for women. Yet what's happening now, in defiance of the law, to appease a vocal minority, biological males are still being admitted into women's hospital wards, changing rooms. You know, this is a government that talks about women and girls' safety, protecting women and girls, defending women and girls. But as soon as they hear any kind of opposition from their activist group, they stop standing up for women. Whenever women need Labour to stand up for them, they back down.
Tell me your thoughts as well on a story today about the government dealing with the fact that more than 1,000 people have made the trip in small boats in less than a week. Now we're over 40,000 people coming across in small boats. 40,652 is the figure.
Well, because our borders are open, right? There are zero consequences for illegal entry. It's become legalized. It's basically decriminalized. No one's prosecuted for it. Reform says that if you do arrive illegally, you will be prosecuted under legislation that is currently in place. But every person that arrives is housed by either the Home Office for a while in hotels, and then is granted asylum, and can bring in untold dependents, housed by local councils, while British families sit on the waiting list. We have legislation right now that says that you have to prioritise those most in need for social housing, and they deem a recent, put someone who's just had their asylum claim granted as the most in need. So what happens is these people who are not British supersede people on the waiting list for social housing, British people.
And actually, with that in mind, and with the cultural differences that we need to keep in mind in all of that, I'm interested in your thoughts on the arguments about the strategy on violence against women and girls. I spoke to two professionals in the field yesterday. We had a really, really interesting voice note that came in from Hertfordshire, from a man there who was a teacher there, actually, in Hertfordshire, Steve, who got in touch with us. Just to have a look at this exchange. Neither of them would really engage with the points. The man certainly did a little bit more than the female guest. Let's just play this clip again.
Good morning, Peter. This is Stephen Hartz. As a college tutor for an FE college, I taught vocational skills to boys of 16 plus and boys from 14 plus that had been excluded from mainstream schools. The only misogyny I ever really encountered, and this is fairly recently, was from Muslim boys from Pakistani, Bangladeshi and Somali heritage who would often absolutely refuse to engage in any way with my female teaching assistant. The other misogyny that I came across was white and black boys emulating the behaviour that they see and hear in rap music videos, which are completely toxic in my opinion. But then the government and Jess Phillips, who I have no confidence in, will no doubt form policy along the lines of what they see in TV dramas. So, yeah, pretty hopeless.
What would you say to Steve, Emily?
I think you have to be very careful generalising a whole culture.
He's not generalising a whole culture. He's talking about his personal experience of teaching children.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really comment on his personal experience. Also, I don't know him personally. I can't comment on him personally.
Well, you can, because he's just told you what it is.
I don't think I can. I'm sorry.
I think just going head on and saying all Muslims are wrong or this is bad because it's and pinning it on Muslims, it's just a very unhelpful way of framing it.
I don't think he's doing that though necessarily. I was accused of doing that. That's what that guest was accusing me of doing, saying it's all about Muslims. It's certainly not all about Muslims, and I said in the interview yesterday that it wasn't all about Muslims. I made the point, even before those points were raised, that there are parts of Jewish culture, for example, that subjugate women. There are parts of Christian culture that subjugate women. I've seen it myself in Northern Ireland when I was growing up. It's certainly not as bad as it was then. And yes, there are parts of Islamic culture as well, and that's what Steve was talking about. And Steve made that point, not just about Muslim children he was teaching or young men that he was teaching, but also about white and black men as well, young men. Laila, who is to blame for this? Kemi Badenoch says it's imported, but misogyny is everywhere. It's in this culture and in this country as well, is it not?
Of course, and listen, we have to be honest that there are some attitudes from people who've arrived into this country who do drive some violence against women, and it's imported. I know that. There are some Muslim cultures who force women to go around in a burqa. That is misogyny. So we can't shy away from it. And frankly, we've allowed parallel communities and parallel values to flourish, as opposed to telling, I don't want to be known as a British Egyptian or a British Muslim. I'm just British and I think, we have to tell people who come here that the civic culture of this country is British, and that does not include misogyny. But there is a problem with what was announced yesterday, is that the government tends to treat boys as a danger, a cultural problem to be corrected, right? I mean, they brought in this term toxic masculinity, as if being masculine is a bad thing. Whereas I think, it's a virtue of being a man, you know, and we need masculine men, in my opinion.
I agree with that, although not when it's toxic. But listen, this debate is a big one, and I think we'll continue. For the meantime, Laila, thank you. I appreciate your contribution today. Laila Cunningham, there, Reform UK councillor, co-leader of Reform's Law and Order campaign.